I think to everyone's surprise, the new Cloverfield movie released yesterday with a trailer at the Super Bowl that came out of nowhere, followed by a release on Netflix 2 hours later, which I was able to catch this morning when I woke up at 9 a.m. for my lecture and figured, I suppose I can get a film in.
Mum, I actually went, asked Dad.
But here it is, the Cloverfield Paradox, promising to answer the questions left by the first film, and in many ways the second film, which till this day I thought was sort of unrelated. I was under the impression that Cloverfield was sort of going for this Black Mirror type thing, but in film form, with each film taking on a different sci-fi concept and just sort of running with it. I did enjoy the first Cloverfield film. I think it's a perfectly suitable monster film. I think it works for what it is. I don't think it's incredible, as some people do make it out to be. I really did enjoy 10 Cloverfield Lane, though. I thought that was a really good, contained thriller, and I'm not sure how I feel about it being linked to this bigger series. I kind of enjoyed it as its own thing. I do suggest giving both those films a watch if you haven't already. They are worth your time, and it's definitely worth at least watching the first one before watching Cloverfield Paradox, as that's where you're going to get the most out of it, arguably. I don't feel I need to spoil anything, as fans of the first Cloverfield already know what I'm talking about. This film, Cloverfield Paradox, was meant to give answers to that first film specifically, which left a lot of things up in the air. Julius Onah's directing this one. He's trying to satisfy the queries and questions that have been hanging over the heads of Cloverfield fans for a long time, and that's not an easy thing to do, and I can't say he's really done a great job of it here. And unfortunately, what we're getting here is an exaggerated version of the Marvel franchise syndrome, where each film is not allowed to exist as its own self-contained thing. It's got to be pulled by the other franchises. But I think it really detracts from this film, and there's a few reasons for that. But first, the gist of the film is that Earth, at an unspecified point in time, is having a severe energy crisis. So Hamilton, played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, is sent up into space along with a crew led by Daniel Bruhl, David Oyelowo, and Chris O'Dowd, just to name a few. This group of people are on a space station with a particle accelerator that, if fired correctly, will be the key to infinite power, solving the energy crisis, which is leading to potential wars on the Earth's surface. But if this goes wrong, this could lead to some serious events on the horizon.
Don't worry about it, it was a good joke, it's fine.
So one of the main ingredients of the film is the cast and the acting, and it's all adequate, it's all suitable. A good job is done by pretty much everyone. I think the writing is a little bit wonky in some places, and some of the humour, mainly delivered by Chris O'Dowd, is not perfect, to say the least. It felt quite forced. There's one bit where he repeatedly makes a joke about an arm, and it's like, okay, we get the point, you find this arm thing funny, but it doesn't mean we do. But for the most part, everybody's doing a fine job with what they're given, even though none of the characters really feel fleshed out especially well. Even the main character of Hamilton, who is given some backstory, some depth, that is attempted to give some sort of weighty sense of purpose and real meaning to her story, but it never really is quite sold by, as I say, silly character motivations, decisions, writing, and just adequate acting that can't quite sell these emotional moments. But I do feel like everyone's doing their best, so that's not the main issue by any stretch. What this film is, if taken on its own merits, is, I suppose, a space mystery, much like Event Horizon that came before it. And I don't think Event Horizon's a good film by any stretch, but I do think evoking it has its merits, because there are some really good ideas in that film that I never feel really came to fruition, but there is some similarities here for sure. You don't really need a compelling cast of characters to make this an interesting mystery. What you do need is an actual mystery. Just before the critical event that sends everything haywire in the movie, as is inevitable, on a little screen on the ship, they're listening to a news broadcast that sort of has this guy saying, hey, I've written a book about the stuff that could happen if you do this, and you might want to listen because it's actually exactly what's going to happen. And while you're listening to this exposition, you're like, anyone that's ever watched a movie, let alone sci-fi movies, knows exactly where this is going to go. It's because he literally just sort of laid it out for you, and it's so blatantly clear. So when this cataclysmic event does happen, the way you visually see it happen also directly reinforces what you've just heard. And so when this film is trying to create this mystery for most of the movie, you're sitting there like, I I already know exactly what's happened. And you hang on to this vague sense that, okay, maybe they're just trying to make it as obvious as possible, but they never really throw anything else into the works. They just try and do some zany stuff with it that would have worked better if you'd just taken that news report out. It ruins a lot of the film. The film then, when you boil it down to its base, is just people wandering around the space station, realizing things have gone wrong, and just sort of interacting with it, and these various events happen to this person, and this person, and this person, and this person. It's as if someone's had a listen, they've gone, okay, so we've got to have them see something weird, and them, and them. Has that one seen anything yet? Oh. Well, we'll give her something, And whilst basic, this setup could have led to a fun, isolated space thriller mystery film. That's a lot of buzzwords there. But it could have led to something, but you spend the whole movie knowing exactly what's happening, and you're just sort of waiting for it to tie into the movies, which you wouldn't have been doing if it hadn't have been the big marketing push of the film. And I'm impressed with the production value. Most of the effects are really good. If you look close at a couple things, especially one involving a wall, there's some stuff there that's a little bit all over the place. And this one guy played by Chris O'Dowd has this like putty thing that he puts on wires. They really love that special effects. They show it about 6-7 times. Like, they're very into it. The outside of the station in particular all looks great, and I do feel like the production values are there, which is good considering it wasn't given a theatrical release, which I think is fine. I just can't help but feel like this central element of mystery completely destroys what this film was going for. It ends up getting really tedious, as I say, going through that checklist. It feels like a checklist, and that's never fun. And you don't have these characters to latch onto or any meaningful story. Occasionally it pops back down to Earth to see what's going on down there, but that's very sporadic and very brief, and it doesn't really feel all that interesting either, even though you really wish they did a little bit more of it and they made it a bit more interesting, and it only serves to confuse the answers that a lot of fans are going to be trying to find in the movie. So not only do I think this mystery is the biggest problem, i.e. there isn't one, that's a really big issue, I also think that if this film hadn't marketed itself so heavily towards these answers and had just worn the veil of being an unrelated film in the Cloverfield universe, and then, wow, like somewhere at the end, chucking in this big, oh my god, it's connected, I think that would have really excited people and gotten people on the internet typing, given the film buzz, and people are so easily able to watch it, that I think it really would have contributed to the film's general aura, and people would have been more into it instead of just looking for things that they've been told to find and then just leaving ultimately unsatisfied. It makes the ending of the film, the final shot, feel so hammy and stupid, where in an alternate universe this film exists with people not knowing where this is going, and the endings are, whoa, I did not see that coming, and it opens up a whole new era of possibilities for this franchise. Even if we disregard any aspect of this being part of the Cloverfield universe, as its own self-contained film in a genre I, in theory, enjoy. I love a good space thriller movie. This just still fundamentally doesn't work, and it's not especially enjoyable or fun, despite its not especially lengthy runtime, and that's really disappointing to me. Is it awful? I can't say it's truly terrible, but it's definitely not good, with a weak screenplay, competent acting at best, and a story that is uninspired to say the least, despite some great inspiration it could have had. Overall, despite my palpable initial excitement at the idea of watching this film just out of nowhere, it was a great gift. I'm going to have to give The Cloverfield Paradox a 4 out of 10. And I can't tell you how much that hurts, because even though I'm not the biggest fan of the original Cloverfield, I really enjoyed the second one, and I did find the mythos of that first film very interesting, and I was a little bit up on that for a while. There's a lot of potential here, and I do really want to see this franchise go forward. If it doesn't, I'm just going to feel even more let down. There are things here I want to see developed upon, and I do believe the potential is there. But unfortunately, that's it. Luckily, if you've got a Netflix subscription, you don't have to pay for it, so if you want to see what's up, it's no harm. But anyway, guys, that was me. Hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you later.